And Father, let those not just be words on a screen, but let those truly be the condition of our heart as we sing hallelujah to you, as we sing praises to you, as we declare that you are worthy, the most worthy above all other things. Father, please continue to move in this place. Just because we stop singing, don't let that be the time that we are done. Instead, God, please continue to move in us as we open up these pages of Scripture to see what it is that you have in mind. Let us leave here different than when we came in. We praise you for what you've done and what you're about to do. It's in the name of Jesus that we pray. You can have a seat. Well, good morning, Renew. It is great to see your beautiful, smiling faces. I spent most of my week this past week in Texas, and I know that's exciting for a lot of you. We have a lot of Texans around here, but I was in Midland. And so, all right, one celebratory thing there. The good news about Midland is you can see Arkansas from Midland. In West Texas, it's so flat. But we were in Texas all week, spent some time with church planters. These days, when I'm out of town, that's usually what it is. Had an opportunity to go out and hang out with about 50 guys and pour into them, be poured into. It was a wonderful time. But always when you're gone for a week, it's challenging to come back and look at the piles and piles of things that were left undone when you weren't there, right? And so these days in my life, in our family's life, I am the bill payer. The first 10 years of our marriage, I did that. The second 10 years of our marriage, Jennifer did that. And now we're entering well into the third 10 years, and it's my turn again. And so you have this big pile of mail to go through, and that was my Friday night activity. You know you've been married 22 years when? Friday night is going through the bills. But one of the things that I noticed as I went through the mail was there was something that was, I guess, a theme to the mail, and it had to do with these things. Citibank, 0% intro for 18 months. Citibank, another one, only this one's the Diamond Preferred. That was take advantage of the exclusive offer. This one is for Jennifer. This one was Citibank. Again, 0% for 18. They must really like us. Oh, a Discover card one. That was kind of pretty, kind of a red. You know, that really makes me want to take out that credit card. American Express for me and another American Express for Jen. And it just continues on and on and on. Oh, this one's especially nice. Jennifer, you won't believe the credit line. You are pre-approved. You know, I have to say, if you're already pre-approved for one of these credit cards, they should just send you the credit card and go, let's just see how it works between us. Just go ahead and see how it goes, and we'll let you know if you owe us any money back. Because that's how they are, But there's over and over and over again. But here's what's so interesting. The theme through all of those is you're pre-approved, you can do all this stuff, but they really don't mean it, do they? It really, what they mean is that these apply to anyone out there, but anyone doesn't mean everyone. There anyone is with approved credit, then you can handle this kind of thing. You can get this stuff if you're the right kind of person for us, if you make the right kind of money and you have the right credit score. That's really what we mean. So anyone actually means just a few people that would fit our criteria. That's not just in the credit card world, of course. That's if you watch TV and you watch the car commercials that are out there. Car commercials have sort of the same idea to them. Like anybody can drive away in a car here. Anyone can get a car as long as you have good credit. That kind of thing. Anyone doesn't mean everyone really in that world. The same thing could go for cell phone deals or vacation packages. Anyone ever get a call from the Blue Green Mountain Resort up there and they want you to come? Anyone is welcome to come and take a tour of the facility so you can buy a timeshare, but anyone really means as long as you make a certain amount of money every year, then you can come for a little free vacation time, that kind of thing. And honestly, though, it applies in lots of areas. It even applies in schools, I think, to a certain degree. I can tell you this from experience. Schools are supposed to be that place that anyone can come. If you live in the district, you should go. But when I was in 7th grade, we moved from Independence, Missouri to Ridgewood, New Jersey. I lived at 52 Lenox Avenue. It is forever burned into my head because I had absolutely no friends in Ridgewood, New Jersey. I was a 7th grader. Don't you feel sad for me now? Let's have a moment of silence. No, it was tough. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. Lies. No, anyway. So it was in 7th grade. And so the only time anyone would talk to me is if they asked me to talk like John Wayne. Now, I don't think I talk like John Wayne, but apparently if you live in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and you get to interact with someone from Independence, Missouri, you sound like John Wayne. And so they asked me to talk like, hey, you, talk like John Wayne again. Or they would ask me, is it hard to get used to wearing shoes? And what animals did you have on your farm? That's the only time anyone spoke to me. My only friend, his name was Bob, and he did not speak English. And that's not a joke. That is a true story. I ate lunch with Bob, and we just looked at each other with those looks like, eat your corn dog, don't make eye contact with anyone else. Because anyone doesn't mean everyone in reality. These are the things we learn. The truth is, it even happens in some churches from time to time, that anyone doesn't actually mean everyone. You might say everyone would be welcome, but in some churches, the reality is you've still got to fit into some sort of mold to fit. And that's not okay. This is one reason I ask you that to make sure that you, if you see someone by themselves, that you bring them along, that you say hi to them, let them come and sit with you, and this is an important thing. But what we have learned in our lives, what we have learned through our own personal experiences, is that anyone doesn't always mean everyone. And I would imagine you've experienced that in your life. Would you agree? That you have understood that when they said anyone, that it actually didn't include you. Anybody ever been there? Tell the truth. And so we've experienced this. The problem then is it creates a dilemma when we hear from Jesus that anyone can come. Because we have been built to believe that anyone doesn't really mean everyone. But when Jesus says anyone, does he mean it? Does it actually mean everyone when Jesus says anyone? And so when Jesus begins his public ministry then, and he begins to invite people to come along, when he invites people specifically to follow, we see in a place like in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, that Jesus says these two very important words, if anyone. Now it continues, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow. If anyone can follow. Now, anyone is significant here because what Jesus is really saying is everyone can follow. That when Jesus says anyone, he's really saying and defining whom is invited, and it's everybody is invited. Jesus invites everyone. There are no pre-qualifications, no exclusions, no money down, none of that stuff with Jesus. It's all inclusive. But I think part of the problem is that many don't realize that the call to anyone includes them. And we live surrounded by people every day who do not believe that anyone includes them. And there are people in this room that I know do not believe it. But when Jesus says anyone, he means everyone. Others will say, though, but you don't know what I've done. I've gone too far. I'd never make the cut. At best, I could admire him. This is sort of that balance between fan and follower that we began talking about last week as we began this new series, that a fan is an enthusiastic admirer, but a follower is more. A follower is this, to deny himself and take up his cross. But many would say, I would like to just sit on the sidelines and look and say, yeah, Jesus is nice, but to follow, I'm not sure that I'm qualified. Many believe it. After all, why would you fill out the application if you know you're going to get turned down? This is the world that we live in, and I would imagine many of you have been there. And so if anyone would have felt this way, though, it would have been someone like Matthew that we read about in the Bible. With Matthew, we see a very interesting story, and I want to take you there and enter into his world in Luke chapter 5. So if you go backwards a few pages in your Bible, you get to see where Matthew comes face to face with Jesus. And Jesus comes and he talks to Matthew, and we see this story, by the way, in the other Gospels as well. But we first meet Matthew in the tax booth, which may not seem like a big deal, but it's a big deal. And so let's read the first part of this story in Luke chapter 5, verse 27a. It says that after that, he, Jesus, went out and noticed a tax collector named Levi, this is also Matthew, sitting in the tax booth. Now you got to understand at this time why this story is such a big deal. Because at this time in Israel, they were under foreign occupation. They weren't able to do what they wanted to do. They were under control by Rome. And Rome was pretty smart. And what they would do is they would hire natives of the land that they were in control over. And they would hire these natives to basically be tax collectors for them. Why? Well, they spoke the language. They understood who the people were. They knew who the people were. And they would hire these people. And in essence, what they would do is if you wanted to be a tax collector, you would sort of bid for the job, like a contractor would bid for a job. And in this case, a contractor would say, Rome, I will get this much money for you from these people. And if you had the high bid, then Rome would basically pick you. And of course, there were politics involved, like in anything. But what happened then is you would subcontract out the tax collection, and Rome would get their amount, and then you as the tax collector would bill them for whatever else you wanted, above and beyond what Rome expected. And these taxes were burdensome, they were heavy, and they were on everything. And if you were one of these people, you would have been considered a traitor because you're collecting taxes and putting heavy burdens on your own people. And the people would have seen you as a traitor, collecting for the enemy, because that's exactly what they were doing. They weren't collecting money for Israel, they were collecting money for Rome. And so the people saw them as criminals and outlaws, and they were ostracized. You never would have talked to one of them. You certainly never would have touched one of them. And you absolutely in no way would you have ever wanted them in your home or wanted to be in their home. In fact, what we see from history is that their money wasn't even accepted in some places. Like if a tax collector went to go shopping, the vendor may very well say, your money is not welcome here. It is unclean. And in fact, there were rabbinic traditions in those days by the rabbis who said that a tax collector was an unforgivable state, that you were too bad and too terrible, you were a religious outcast. There is no way God would want you. You are so evil and terrible. And Jesus has just invited this lying, cheating, Rome-loving, morally corrupt, spiritually bankrupt tax collector to follow. To follow. That's the rest of verse 27. After that, he, Jesus, went out and noticed a tax collector named Levi sitting in the tax booth. And he said to him, follow me. What in the world is Jesus thinking? Doesn't he know who this guy is? Do you think Jesus knew who Matthew was? Of course he does. But what is Jesus thinking? No one would have called Matthew to follow along or do anything with them. And yet here Jesus is with the worst of the worst. Have you ever wondered that about people, though? I mean, have you ever known somebody that just was terrible, had a terrible life, and then all of a sudden they turn around, they follow Jesus, and it's just a totally different person? Has that ever annoyed you? Just be honest. I mean, you ever seen that and gone, it can't be real. They're too bad. They're too evil. You know, that's a normal thought. People had to have been thinking this about Matthew. And by the way, this isn't the first time that Jesus does this. I mean, Jesus does this in other places. Let me show you another place, maybe two. If you look over at Mark chapter 1, so just go back a little bit farther. But in Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 18, we see Jesus sort of has a track record of this. It says, as Jesus, was going along by the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Let me stop there and just tell you, fishermen also didn't exactly have the best reputation in the city. They weren't exactly the people you go, hey, there's some fishermen, let's have them over for dinner. This is not the kind of people that you would do that with. Verse 17, and Jesus said to them, follow me, and I will make you to become fishers of men. And immediately they left their nets, and they followed him. So here we see Jesus going after, again, another group of the untouchables. And Jesus is asking these people with not the best reputation to follow along. And he does it again. You continue on. Jesus is on a roll. Not verse 19, going on a little further. He saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, who were also in the boat mending the nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and went away to follow him. This is a big deal. Jesus continues to call these unworthy, nasty people to be the ones to follow him. And what do? They all walk away from their livelihood. This last example in verses 19 and 20, they leave their dad in the boat. See ya. Off we go to follow the rabbi. And can you just imagine? Just picture that for a moment. Dad, we're going to go follow this guy. Good luck. And off we go. Yeah. Have you ever been in that moment where you could see this in your head? They leave Pops behind. They leave him with the higher. Here's the deal. They leave their livelihood. They leave their opportunity for life, all of it behind. They leave it all. They leave it all, and they walk away. Go back to Matthew. This is what we see with Matthew's story as well. We go back to this in Matthew chapter 5, verse 28. Here's how we see it continue to come about. In Luke chapter 5, verse 28. Here it says, and after that he went out and noticed a tax collector named Levi, Matthew, sitting in the tax booth, and he said to him, follow me. And he left everything behind, and he got up and began to follow. Matthew leaves behind his business. He leaves behind his money, his power, his life, and he follows. But I have to tell you that this is what Jesus wants all of us to do. What Matthew does is what Jesus is really calling us to. Not only does Matthew leave behind all of the stuff that stands between him and Jesus, that he gets rid of all of the stuff, not only does he do it for himself, but he also then invites all of his loser friends to find Jesus as well. This is exactly what we see in verse 29 of Luke chapter 5. And Levi, Matthew, gave a big reception. This proves to us he had lots of money. He throws a big party for who? He throws a big party for Jesus. And who are the guests that come? And there was a great crowd of tax collectors and other people who were reclining at the table with them. Guess what? The only people that would have hung out with tax collectors were other tax collectors, or maybe some fishermen and prostitutes. This is who Matthew invites to the table with Jesus. The religious leaders flip out. They can't believe Jesus would be seen with these kinds of people. In verse 31, Jesus said, it is not those who are well who need the physician, but those who are sick. But why, Jesus? Why them? Why them? Why does he call them? Why Matthew? Why Peter? Why Andrew? Why James? Why John? Why Spencer? Why you? Why? Well, you have to understand the way that Jesus was thinking in relation to the world around him. Now, the world around him, the rabbis, they would not have done this. You have to understand that Jesus was a rabbi in that sense, that he was a teacher of God. He was essentially homeless and unconventional, but he was still a rabbi. And rabbis were special because they had a knowledge of the Torah, which was the first 5 books of the Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They were experts in these things, and the prophets and all those teachings. They were, in essence, the PhDs of their time. They were experts in all these things. But the rabbis were also special because they had a group of people called Talmids that followed them around. Now, we would spell it Talmid, but it sounds like Talmid. And a Talmid was basically a student or a disciple or really an apprentice who's going to walk in the footsteps. And so every rabbi had a group of students, of disciples, of apprentices that would follow them around all of the time. And this was a very special thing because it was hard to get into. Just because you wanted to follow a rabbi didn't mean that you were going to get to. They got to pick. It was very exclusive. Not everyone could. And if you couldn't get in with a rabbi, you had to go find a trade and get a job, like as a fisherman or whatever. But in order to become a Talmid of a rabbi, you had to go through an application process. And we're not talking about junior college application process, more like Harvard application process. You need a 33 on the ACT and a 4.0 to even apply. because anyone doesn't mean everyone with them. And this is important for all of these guys as they're coming along. And so the rabbis would quiz them. It was intense. They would ask them questions like, how many times is the word Lord in the book of Leviticus? Answer now. And if you couldn't answer, you were out. This was intense and difficult and almost impossible. And it was important because the caliber of student told you what kind of teacher they were. If you had a bunch of loser students following you around, you would assume the teacher is a loser, because he's not done a very good job of teaching the students. Everybody with me? This is what's going on in the culture. This is what they would have understood. But Jesus turns it upside down like he does constantly. Jesus changes the system. And instead of picking the upper echelon, instead of picking the top of the crop, Jesus picks the throwaways. Jesus picks the tax collectors and the fishermen and the political hotheads and the everyday nobodies. This is who Jesus picks to follow. This is who Jesus wants to come in alignment and follow. And Jesus makes the invitation. And slowly but surely, people begin to catch on that there's a possibility for them to actually follow a great teacher, to actually begin to study at the feet of a rabbi. And many began to follow Jesus. The ones who would never have been able to be with any other rabbi. Jesus makes a way. And they began to realize that when Jesus said anyone, he meant it. That when Jesus said anyone, it meant everyone with Jesus. And that applies to you and me too. That anyone means everyone. No catch, no fine print, no hidden fees. And so what? Why is this important? Why even talk about all of that? Well, here's the thing. If anyone really means everyone, that means everyone has the opportunity to follow Jesus. The question is, will we? But are you one of the anyones who will follow? And so what I want to do is do this with you, because I need your help, because here's the deal. This kind of thing applies to the whole church. And we're gathered here together, so I need your help. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to answer it. So the question might be, how about a teacher? Is a teacher welcome? And the answer is anyone. And I want to hear you say anyone, because I want you to believe that it's true. So let's practice. How about a teacher? Anyone. Good. How about someone with a sexual past? Anyone. How about an ex-con? An inmate? Anyone. Divorced? Anyone. Legalist? Anyone. Alcoholic? Anyone. Pothead? Anyone. Murderer? Anyone. Addict? Anyone. Emotionally scarred? Anyone. Hypocrite? Anyone. Bankrupt? Anyone. Single mom? Anyone. Tattooed? Anyone. Black, white, fat, or thin? Anyone. Public school, private school, or homeschool? Anyone. A tie wearer? Well, might make an exclusion there. White collar? Blue collar? Military, civilian, presidents, peasants. Who did I miss? Say it. Anyone. Anyone. You see, anyone means everyone with Jesus. But it also means no more excuses. And I need you to hear that because it's important. It means no more excuses. When Jesus invites anyone to follow him, he doesn't just break down the barriers that exist that keep people from following God. He also gets rid of the excuses that people make, the excuses that people are hiding behind, the excuses that people give for why this doesn't apply to them. Anyone destroys the excuses, because everyone can come. Everyone can be a follower. But I will say, for the church, though, it has implications. It has very important implications for us, and I need you to hear this. The question is, we have asked over and over, is the church really the hospital for soul-sick people? That means, is this church ready for people that are messed up, the tax collectors and fishermen of the world. Is the church ready for that? And the answer is, it must be. It must be. We're called to meet people where they are and love them and lead them to where they need to be. Who believes that? If it's true, then it has implications for the church, because what it means then is followers, a follower, a increasingly committed follower of Jesus. What it means for us then is that we have to be willing to listen, that we have to be willing to be present in people's lives when they're broken and messy. It means to the church that we have to be willing to hear stories of brokenness and hurts and still welcome people in with open arms. Because a fan won't listen. A fan, only an enthusiastic admirer of Jesus, they will not be there. A fan will want things to be shallow and comfortable. And there are churches around our world that are full of fans that say, please don't bring your nastiness here. Let's just all smile and fake it till we make it. A fan wants it to be shallow. But a follower says, because I will follow in the footsteps of my Jesus, who was willing to walk in the mire and the muck of the world, I too will follow him in that. A church of followers can deal with the brokenness of a world that's coming to find hope and peace and strength. But a church full of fans will say, it's too messy for me. This is an important distinction. This is why we want people to do life together. To say, we're willing to spend time together in community, in a community group like we'll have tonight and throughout the week as different things. This is a way that we begin to grow together, to help fans become followers and for followers to live out the life that Jesus has called us to. And so where do we go from here? What do we do with this? Well, when Jesus makes his invitation, when Jesus says this, if anyone, he's welcoming anyone who will come and follow. He's really welcoming anybody, but it also is very clear, and you've got to hear this, that when you accept an invitation to follow, it will cost you. It will cost you. There are a lot of false teachers out there these days that will say, look, if you'll just say a prayer about Jesus, say, yeah, I'm all in, then you'll never have any problems anymore. I just laugh when I hear those things. It's just not the reality. That when you choose to follow, it's putting some skin in the game, and it will cost you. Back to our history, when a Talmud, a student, a disciple, an apprentice, when they were accepted into a rabbi school, they would leave their homes, they would leave their jobs, they would often leave behind anything that would hold them back from completely following the rabbi. This was normal, this was expected, and literally they would go anywhere the rabbi went. So if the rabbi went to the market, his students would follow. If a rabbi decided to go to another town, the students would follow. If a rabbi decided to go visit someone who was sick and dying in their home, the students would follow. But to follow a teacher named Jesus, it would cost even more. Because with Jesus, they follow him much further than going into someone's home to visit. With Jesus, if he is willing to be homeless, his students have to be willing to be homeless. With Jesus, if he decided to be among the sinners and the shameful of the society, the students would need to do that. And if Jesus was willing to not flee from persecution, even unto death, the students are called to follow. And that's what Jesus offers. The greatest teacher who ever lived, offers you the chance to become one of his apprentices, one of his talmids, one of his students. And when Jesus says anyone, he means everyone. No exclusions, no excuses, no qualifications. But even though he makes this invitation to follow to anyone, he also guarantees you that it will cost you. And it may cost you everything someday. This is the call. Being his disciple and a follower, here's what it really means. Putting away selfish desires. Putting away the things that you just want to do, whether they are in alignment with God or not. Being a real follower of Jesus means really shouldering your own cross every day. In fact, that's what Luke 9:23 says. And he was saying to them all, if anyone, which means everyone, wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow. This is the picture of a follower. It's simple, but it's so demanding. And so for the original 12, it meant death for them. This is what history really tells us. For people around our world right now, we are living in a time that people that choose to follow are literally taking up their cross. That are literally losing their homes and their families and their lives. And for followers here in Arkansas in 2015, it is very unlikely that you will lose your life because of a follow of Christ. But it at least means understanding that we belong to him and that we live our lives to serve his purposes. That we will surrender our own desires even when it's not popular, even when it may hurt, even when we may lose friends, to surrender our own will to follow his will. This is what it at least means. At the very least, this is what it looks like. So the question is, do you think of your relationship with God primarily in terms of what can he do for you, or what will he do in you and through you? And I think this is the essence of fan versus follower. The fan says, God, I just want you to do stuff for me. I want you to be my magic genie in a bottle that when I need something, I'm going to come and go, hey, how about a little of this and that? But the follower says, yes, I know I can live a blessed life to follow. Jesus promises that as well. But the answer is, Jesus, what do you want to do in me and through me? It is a picture of surrender. It's a picture of saying, more of him, less of me every day. This is the picture of an ever-increasing, committed follower, disciple of Jesus. And so, here's the invitation for you today. Jesus says, follow me. He meets you right where you are, wherever that is. Some of you, it may be like the tax booth. Some of you, it may be like the fishermen. Some of you, it may be like the prostitutes. Some of you may be just meeting you right where you are in the middle of your own selfish desires or whatever it is. And this isn't an answer. This isn't just a question for you, but for me as well. That Jesus meets us right where we are, wherever that is, and his answer in all of it is, follow me. And it is for you. Anyone means everyone. Follow. And what I want to invite you to is to follow him even to the cross. That's what this verse says. And so today I want to invite you to the cross. Now the way that we're going to do it is in communion, where we take that bread and remember the body broken, and take the cup and remember the blood shed. But you're invited to come to the cross, because it's at the cross that all of it comes together. It's at the cross we have to see it, and we have to know it and understand it to understand what it means to take up our cross, which means to quit living for myself and and to live for Him at the very least. And so today you're invited to come to the table, to come to the cross and remember the body and the blood broken and shed. But you're also invited to stay right there in your seats and ask God, what is it that's standing between you and me? Reveal it to me and get rid of it, please. I will tell you, it's a prayer that I pray almost every day, if not every day. Before I walk up on this stage, if you ever watch me, you'll see me in some point in that last song before I come up. I will stop and I will pray. I will often pray, God, purify my lips. Allow my words to be your words. And if there's anything standing between you and me, reveal it to me or remove it from me so that I can see you more clearly, so I can hear you more clearly. This is part of denying myself. God, not my will, but yours. So maybe today is a time, an invitation to that kind of prayer. It's a little scary sometimes to say, God, reveal to me the things that I've put in place of you or the things that are in between you and me, but reveal it and then be still enough to listen and see what He wants to reveal. And if you just need me to pray over you or one of our leaders to pray over you, some of us will come up and sit on that front row and you can just come up and pray with us. And we'll pray over you. If you're ready to make a commitment to follow Christ, let today be the day, because Jesus says, follow me. Follow me. If you're following something else, if you're following yourself, Jesus says, follow me. Follow me. So you're invited to take that time now. We'll come back together and we'll pray one last time. But let's do that. Let's respond.